Hello, my name is Janne Kauhanen. I'm the host and sauna majori of Cybersecurity Sauna. Today's episode was recorded live on site at our Cybersecurity Sauna booth at the Sphere 22 security event in Helsinki. We had an opportunity to talk to some of the guests and speakers at the event. I'm joined by Sari Stenfors, futurist and strategist. What exactly is a futurist, Sari?
Well, futurist is a person who has a lot of tools to get us to think about a long-term future. What I do is I have all sorts of different ways of creating visions and timelines for the future.
Right, okay, that's fascinating. And you're here at Sphere 22 to talk about AIs and humanness and concepts like this. And we in the security industry, we always want to focus on problems, but you also have a concept that you call positive futures.
Yes, so I've made a decision that I only do positive futures.
Okay.
And that's a decision I took some years ago because it looks a little bit gloomy right now in the world. Yeah. But yet I think that there isn't really truly anything to be so gloomy about because we do have a lot of problems as humankind, but all of the problems that we have can be solved. It's just for us humans to decide that we're going to solve them and look at what it would look like if we looked at the positive side.
Yeah, I think that's the power of having that vision because you're showing us what it could look like and that sort of unites us all like that's what I want. That's what I want to work for.
Yeah. So I always say that thinking about long-term visions, actually what it does, it helps you to make today's priorities clear.
Right.
It makes life today easier when you know what you're going forward to. And exactly like you said.
Yeah. But if I can just trouble you with the risks a little bit, because we're in an industry where we like to talk about risks. So what are some of the things, like the biggest maybe risks or challenges that we have to overcome to reach those positive futures and not some gloomy dystopia?
First, I want to say that my positive futures are not utopian futures.
Right, okay.
They're realistic and they are hopeful futures. I like calling them hopeful futures.
Sure.
Because they're all about something that we're hoping for that we would like. But it doesn't mean that they're utopian. They're realistic and they have both the positive side and the negative side. We humans are always going to be dramatic. And how our mind works is we have our devil side and we have the angel side.
Yeah.
That's never going to change. No matter what kind of cyborgs we're going to become, we're going to be human and we're going to have those both sides. So I think a positive, realistic future for humans, it will always have risks. It will always have the positive and negative side.
Okay. So what would be some of the things that would keep us from reaching sort of the better futures that we might have ahead of us right now?
I think in my presentation, I was talking about one worrisome topic, and that is how the media is giving us dystopian futures. So that we really think that the positive future is not going to happen. And that specifically affects young adults because their brains are still developing. Being in a situation that you could think about the future in a positive way, it often doesn't happen before you have reached the age of over 30 or 35.
Right.
Because our brain is still developing and we easily get hysteria about the environment. It's easy for our brain to think that the worst is going to happen when we're young.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. And then there's another thing that our brains are not made to think about the future in the long term.
Sure.
If you're trying to get to the long-term future, let's say, I always use 7 years. So say the 7-year future. That's maybe beyond what you're going to live.
Sure.
Right? It will be really hard for you to think if you start from today. Because what I call happens is that you start digging yourself in. When you think about the future, trying to make it good, then what happens is you go like, oh, this technology doesn't yet exist. We can't do it. And you get into these detailed questions that bring down your positive intentions to create a good future. So that's why you need a futurist that brings you different kinds of mental tools that the biases that you have in your brain are not going to affect how you envision the future.
Well, you're at an info security event and we like to talk about our own field, obviously.
Love that.
So what sort of role do you feel that information security has in sort of what kind of futures will play out for us?
I had a really nice timeline for this, what's going to happen. And it ended up with 2092, there's going to be cyborg peace treaty in the world. And it's going to end all the need for digital security.
Okay, perfect.
So up until 2092, it's going to be a blooming industry.
Okay,
So and also I predicted in my timeline that a whole field is going to change names. And at some point, because humanness is a really big mega trend.
Sure.
I think that we're going to be all about like hopefulness and humanness. We're going to rename the industry. It's going to be called cyber trust.
Nice. Okay. Well, that aligns beautifully with what we're talking about here. We're talking about co-security and building security together with our partners and clients. So that works out beautifully for us.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
you've got it all together.
For the next 70 years or so, and then it's done.
Yeah. Well, you just need to start calling it, right?
Absolutely,
so that you get to the future. Yeah. The peace treaty. Yeah.
But you're talking about humaneness and humanness, what it means to be human, but at the same time you're talking about us turning into cyborgs. Isn't there a sort of dissonance between the two?
I think it's a question of what you think that what the cyborg is.
Okay.
And I think that you are a cyborg. I see that you wear those glasses.
Yes, I'm augmenting my vision.
You're augmenting your vision, and then I am sure you have those funny things in your ears when you're out of here. and you're you're definitely a cyborg.
Okay.
Or could you function without your mobile phone?
That's a question I ask myself every day. Probably not. This job requires it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have outsourced so much of my brain to my phone.
Absolutely.
I really like without a GPS, I don't think I could function without sending messages to my friends and coworkers. I don't think we could communicate anymore. I do not think that I could anymore function. And I do need those funny extra ears all the time because I listen to music, I talk to people through them. I also wear glasses. I'm completely augmented, and it happened in a really weird way. And for some reason, people still think that cyborgs are something that are so far away and they're mechanic and they're bad. But my cyborg is me. My cyborg looks like you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if we had better technology today, I would add stuff like AR vision in my glasses to show me my roots. I would add that in a heartbeat if it was easy and feasible.
And you're not even thinking, and you're going deeper and deeper being a cyborg.
Yeah, I just realized when you were talking about the GPS that I actually use my navigator even when I'm driving along the roads. I know because that gives me like traffic information and stuff like that. So
even going home, I can't do it without my GPS.
I'm pretty sure I could find my way if I tried, but I'm not going to risk it.
Hey, we are cyborgs.
We absolutely are. Okay, that makes sense. If there was one piece of advice you'd like to give, like everybody out there who's thinking about how to help their workforce, like embrace their full potential in the bright futures we have ahead, what would that be like for people in general? Like what could we do to ensure the optimal outcomes in these futures?
I think we need to get personally engaged in the positive futures. And I think we also need to understand that each one of us has a different world view of what a positive future looks like. So I have been having future dinners, giving awards to people in the future for saving the world. Nice. And my future dinners take place in 2092. And it can be friends or it can be, anybody, colleagues or anybody. I sit down and then we give these awards to everybody. And then you hold a little speech, Oscar-style speech, and you tell what you did to save the world. And every single person has a story in them. They all know how they saved the world if they were just given an award for it. And if somebody applauded. Yeah. And I think that is actually what works so beautifully because we all know what we would do to save the world. And we just need to share it. There isn't any way nowadays to share. And we keep these things secret from each other because they seem silly. So that's why I have these silly award dinners where you can take a little glass of wine and you can just, say this is a silly award-winning situation. And then you actually share them and it feels like, hey, I shared what I had inside me and I didn't even know I had it inside me. But this is what I'm trying to do. That works.
That is beautiful. And with that hopeful future, I want to wrap up the interview. And thank you for being with us today in Cybersecurity Sauna.
Thank you for having me.
That was our show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in.